With everything we do, we always consult with our customers. And when we don't, we make mistakes. And I can totally tell you a bit more about this in a minute, because we did make a mistake this year, which is unfortunate, but you learn from your mistakes. So generally speaking, whenever we're releasing a formula update, a new flavor addition, could be limited, could be permanent, or even a new product, we consult with our customers from the get-go. This could be through post-purchase surveys, very simple, very straightforward. This could be through in-depth customer surveys that we send out a type form through email. But we also go as far as including them in a test panel where we actually send them products, ask for their feedback, in return they get like a small financial incentive from us.
Hey guys, and welcome to the CEO After Dark show. Today I have with me Otto Mouton, the managing director of Jimmy Joy, a bootstrap brand that sells nutritionally complete meals and has done what many people would think is impossible. They've scaled bootstrapped in a category that this simply doesn't happen that much. They've sold over 40 million meals as of today, and I believe shipping 10 meals per minute, which is crazy. And Otto has been there since the beginning, basically. So I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation. We're going to see, like, how did this happen, first of all? What did Otto do during this journey? And hopefully get a lot of insights into how you scale in a bootstrapped way in the food category. Otto, thank you for taking the time. Welcome to the show. Do you mind just introducing yourself in a few words, or a lot of words?
Yes, of course. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction. There is definitely a lot of truth in there. So yeah, basically, how did I end up at Jimmy Joy and being the managing director for this company is actually quite an interesting story, and a long one. So if you have some time, now I'll try to keep it a little bit condensed. So yeah, basically, it is one of those classic startup stories. So I'm not the founder, by the way, nor the CEO. I'm the managing director, so I take care of it day to day. But I was one of the first employees. So I got in quite early when the company was around for, let's say, a year or so. And I actually started out as an intern, because I came from business school and was looking for a, real world, opportunity, and a company where I could solve a actual problem that would make impact. And that's kind of how I ended up at Jimmy Joy. So my original, so to say, internship, project was to, figure out if, we can bring Jimmy Joy products to retail. And as you can maybe imagine, being in the food industry with your own in-house production, early stage, it can get quite messy. So, to give you an idea, maybe I should introduce the products a little bit as well.
Yeah.
We were still mixing our nutritionally complete meal shakes in cement mixers. There were people running around in lab coats we did kind of have like a party tent scenario, but it wasn't by no means an official certified production facility. So that was quite a challenge. To give you a little bit more context about what we do, we sell nutritionally complete meals, and the kind of like definition of nutritionally complete is a meal that contains all the nutrients that you need on a daily basis. So we have these big international organs like the World Health Organization and the European Food Safety Authority, and they kind of define what works in terms of nutrition for, let's say, 95% plus of the population, right? With some outliers here and there. And based off of those kind of like nutritional spectrum, we formulate our products, which started off as meal shakes. So just add powder with water, shake it, and that kind of gives you like a liquid meal that contains all the nutrients. And after that, we also ventured in different type of formats. We were actually the first nutritionally complete meal company in the world to launch bars, our Plenny bar, one of our best sellers, amazing product. And also the ready to drinks. which has been done before. A lot of competitors are very bullish on the drinks as well. And eventually also the nutritionally complete Plenny pots, which is basically like an instant hot meal or an instant noodle, if you may. And it comes in a variety of, different type of like bases. So we have pasta dishes, we have rice dishes, risottos. And it's same concept, nutritionally complete. You just add hot water and that is that. And I think we can proudly say that we are the only nutritionally complete meal company in the world that still have their own in-house production facility to this date. So we do all the shakes ourselves. Naturally, the other products are outsourced. We work with contract manufacturers all over Europe. But yeah, quite excited to be able to say that we still successfully do everything in house. Even though it comes with a ton of extra responsibilities and rules, it is definitely fun. So yeah, basically, to basically go back to how I ended up at Jimmy Joy, that was my original project. And after that, because it was still so early stage and kind of looking what direction the company would go to, we had a lot of media attention at the time, but there wasn't any real kind of like structure or marketing department or sales department. Everybody was like kind of running around all over the place. So they asked me to stay on because I finished my internship and therefore also my studies, and to pick up business development. As I have a commercial background, business school, it totally makes sense. It was a very cool company. We were all over the place. Joey was blowing up in the media. He's our CEO and founder. So it was really a really exciting time. So I started doing business development, venturing into new markets, making sure that logistics were streamlined. But most importantly, also getting our products actually in retail, which was still a bit of a challenge, even though I had everything nicely written down on paper. We also, now had to make it a reality. And for a bunch of 20 or so year olds, building that factory or that production room in Amsterdam was of course still quite challenging. And after that, making sure that we, get all the right papers for it as well, and that we follow all rules and legislations and get the certifications that eventually allow you to sell to retail, because they just have very, very strict rules. So, I did that for a while. I think 3-ish years. We also ventured across the Pacific into the United States. Have 2 warehouses there now, West Coast and East Coast, to a point where it was time for me to take one step up and became chief commercial officer. At this time, I think we were like 25, 30 people. So a very fancy title on paper, but in reality, I was still all over the place. But just looking a little bit further than just the business development side of things, also working with day-to-day marketing, the commercial side of product development, customer care. So most of the front-facing stuff within the company I was taking care of, which then eventually led me to the position that I'm in today, which is managing director. But I've only been doing that since July last year, so about 6 months now.
That has to be the most impressive internship career trajectory I've ever heard, right? Like, it's crazy.
I mean, considering we did it about 8 years, just over 8 years. But I think that's also one of the one of the reasons why I chose this path, because A, I wanted to make impact, and B, I wanted to move fast, because I like moving fast. I like challenges, and I'm a go-getter. I used to be a competitive gamer, so I'm a competitive person in that sense. And my background from that business school was mostly focused around like the car industry, and I've worked with brands like BMW and Mini and the likes. But then like I could see my next thing after, graduating from business school to be on like the 13th floor somewhere in a boring, business, building, working for BMW, and waiting 2-3 years every time to kind of like make promotion, go up to the next level. The corporate life is just not really for me. I like to be in a startup environment and just get shit done. So I was very fortunate to have this opportunity, and I'm very thankful for it as well. But it was also very much done on purpose.
What game were you playing? You said you were a competitive gamer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I started off playing Counter-Strike 1.6 a long time ago. That's like early 2000s. Did quite well there, and then moved over to World of Warcraft when it basically peaked. I competed for 3-4 years during like the original popular patches. I was consistently top 10, top 20 of the world.
Wow.
So even though prize money and big international events were the thing back then, it was still pretty cool that out of 12, 13 million players, I think at the time, I was definitely up there with consistently top 20-ish. Yeah.
I played a little bit of World of Warcraft too. I wasn't good, to be honest, but I did play as well. But what I've noticed is, and I say this very seriously, like to the point I'm thinking of even like actively looking for it when I do interviews with people. Like people that game seriously, they are really good at solving problems. They are really good at like
Yes.
optimization, if you will, right? Because if you have to compete, you start thinking about the game in terms of data, like problem solving, etc. And like I guess you are one more example in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's very a lot of competitive gamers tend to do well in the business world because you kind of like translate that gamification into real life. You start seeing real life as a game, building a business as a game, playing with the numbers, and yeah, for sure, I completely agree.
One thing I've noticed, because we've worked together for a little while now, is that you are also very
Mm-hmm.
technical when it comes to the digital marketing scene. Like I've seen you talk about attribution, I've seen you talk about like things that are not necessarily related to like the retail slash business development background. How did you make this pivot to the digital world also?
Um, well, first and foremost, of course, we're an e-commerce company. So even with our expansion into national retail, at least in the Netherlands, um, over 90% of our business is still online. So 90% of revenue. And naturally, when we kind of make the switch from I forgot what platform we were on, some stupid custom platform. We made the switch to Shopify in early 2018, and that kind of aligned with my switch from business development manager to CCO. So I was kind of like involved from the get-go with that whole transition. And it really interested me. Online marketing and e-commerce are now literally like in my DNA. I breathe e-com, and I love tech. So it's something that kind of like naturally grew on me. And I think maybe I undersold my kind of like responsibilities, because my main responsibility, of course, was growing the company digitally. So e-commerce was probably like 60-70% of my actual day to day, and the marketing, product development, etc. is still super important. But I was focusing a lot on e-com and the technicalities of it.
How did you guys do it? Like bootstrapping is hard, generally speaking, but like in the food category,
Yeah.
like I can't think of many companies that have actually done it. Like,
Yeah.
is there anything in particular that you guys like figured out that others don't, or like, I mean, the product is good,
Yes.
clearly, so there's
So
that. But like,
the I was gonna say the number there's I think there's three main reasons. The number one main reason is that we have an amazing product, and of course, I'm here plugging my own products, but you've tasted them. You can look through thousands and thousands or tens of thousands of reviews, and people love it, and I think that is the first and foremost most important part. I think secondly, what really helped us was the initial traction. So we were actually the first European kind of like Soylent competitor, because Soylent blew up in Silicon Valley, 75 million in funding. And Joey, our founder, was the first one to kind of like bring the concept to Europe. So we rode that initial wave and got a lot of media attention. And that basically enabled us to scale up to like the 1 to 2 million, if I'm not mistaken, figure within like a year. And at that time, as a small Dutch company, doing ecom was like pretty insane. And in that process, we also managed to kind of like exceptionally scale our sourcing as well, because we were still just producing shakes. We did everything on shakes. And once you kind of like get in the hundreds of thousands, or basically like the 6 to 7 figures, that's where you get economies of scale, especially when you're in the ingredients business. And by producing in house, we also saved quite a few pennies there, because you don't have to pay someone else to produce it for you. And then I think so. The product's great. We had the initial traction, and then because the product is great and you sell a consumable, people come back. And I think that is one of the kind of like most overlooked things in ecom, unless you're in the food and bev industry, is that because you're selling a consumable that people consume on a daily basis and has relatively high AOV, you can scale quite fast if you have margins. And that's kind of like, I think what's kept us afloat is maybe also a bit of an understatement, but what allowed us to scale in a way where we can still say we're 100% bootstrap. So we're like family or employee owned, unlike some other players in the space who have in the tens of millions and even hundreds of millions in funding now. If we look into YFood in Germany, where Nestle just took I think 230-ish million euro stake. So it's just like mind boggling. But yeah, I think those three things is basically what enabled us to scale profitably bootstrap. Yeah.
Talking about the products, by the way, I have not been paid to say that, but I have actually tried the products, and they are indeed very, very nice. And what I liked a lot is that they're very filling also. So when you, generally speaking, when you drink your calories, you're not as full as if you would eat something, right? Like it makes sense. But in Jimmy Joy's case, I found myself like drinking a shake in the morning and then like not needing to eat anything for like pretty long time actually. So I would agree that the product is great. Obviously, besides it tastes nice, etc., it made me feel also energetic. So it's not that I just wasn't hungry. It's that I also felt nice and like alert and focused, etc. Like I recall specifically, it's funny. You don't know this, but when I first tried the product, I drink a lot of caffeine also, and I was feeling like very alert, and I was like, did I drink more caffeine or like is it the food, etc. Like I was feeling very very energized. And I think,
I
and
had
I'm saying this,
exactly the same when I
yeah,
first started eating Jimmy Joe, which is now like 8 years ago. But I felt the same. I was more energetic in the morning because you're getting the right energy, right? It's not about the calories, but it's the actual nutrition that's behind it. And I think
yeah,
there's a very logical explanation for it, because I mean there is decades of research that went into these, health organizations, and hundreds of researchers who kind of like figured out along the way. And I'm not saying we're done here. Like we have a long way to go still. And we still have to figure out a lot of shit when it comes to nutrition. But I think having the sort of like right base and following that scientific research, you just can't really go wrong with it unless you are not part of that 95% and you have allergies or specific dietary restrictions in a sense. And I think the staying full is partly because we usually don't really have a lot of protein in our Western diet, and our products are quite high in protein, which helps with satiety, but also the fibers. Because we Westerners are just a sucker for fibers. We don't eat them enough at
yeah.
all. So that's definitely something that helped as well. But it's good to hear that it helps you with your energy levels as well, because a lot of people have the same experience.
What I've noticed also is, correct me if I'm wrong, but like my observation is that you guys are actually actively seeking feedback about the products. which would,
Yes.
in my mind, explain why the products are good. Because if you are actually interested in what people say, then you can also iterate and like keep building towards the
Yeah.
direction that they want.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting to we basically, with everything we do, we always consult with our customers. And when we don't, we make mistakes. And I can totally tell you a bit more about this in a minute, because we did make a mistake this year, which is unfortunate, but you learn from your mistakes. So generally speaking, whenever we're releasing a formula update, a new flavor addition, could be limited, could be permanent, or even a new product, we consult with our customers from the get-go. This could be through post-purchase surveys, very simple, very straightforward. This could be through in-depth customer surveys that we send out a type form through email. But we also go as far as including them in a test panel where we actually send them products, ask for their feedback. In return, they get like a small financial incentive from us, to a point where we actually invite people over to our office in Amsterdam to, do like a final round of checking to see if it's, fit to go to market in that specific form. And it's really fun because you have this luxury to do this as a D2C company, right? So if your main distribution channels, for example, are retail, you have to go kind of like the route where you hope to find or reach out to customers that buy your product in retail, and then kind of like see if you can reach out to them in a way where you can gather that feedback. But because we basically have all this first party data available, we can always openly, constantly have this conversation with our customers, and that definitely helps us improve the products. Not always, because sometimes we have customers who come to us and say like, yeah, I really want to have a stronger flavor, and I just ordered from you guys, and like, is this supposed to taste like chocolate? And then we're like, okay, give it a few more days and see how you feel next week or even next month when you're about to repurchase. And then oftentimes they even come back to us and say, okay, listen, you were right. If I had a super strong chocolate flavor, I would probably experience flavor fatigue, and I've grown accustomed to it. I don't want it to be overly sweet. So you guys are doing a good job there. And that's like one of the main points of feedback that we usually get about flavor. And of course, like, taste is subjective, and flavor is subjective. And it's not for everyone. But it's a great example that it's sometimes also good to not always listen to your customers when they start screaming initially. And then we also ventured into a non-food product last year, where we ventured outside of the world of nutritionally complete meals, and wanted to make a blood test kit that's only available in the Netherlands currently. We're not finding the traction for it. So we have decided to discontinue it after only, I think, 4 or 5 months of it being live, which is a real shame, because we spent, I think, like almost 1.5 years researching and developing this product and preparing it for launch. But we should have consulted more with our customers and also asked the right questions, because I think that's also a big part of the success is asking the right questions. And sometimes you really have to go granular and figure out, okay, what exactly moves the needle to kind of like stay in marketing terms. Because, we did ask our customers, of course, would you be interested in a blood test kit? What would you be willing to pay? What kind of biomarkers are you looking for? And we kind of like took that data together, and we made a product out of it. Then we launched it. It was a complete shit show, so to say. Regretfully, of course, but that is sometimes you do make these mistakes, and you learn from them, and you try to just never look back, and continue with what you do best.
Did you do pre-orders for it?
No, we did not.
I think generally that could be. I'm saying this for posterity. I think that could be an interesting way to go about launching products, because then you basically fund the development through the pre-orders, right? So if people are actually interested, they pay for it, And I think that could be quite interesting. So I'm curious. This is for my own personal curiosity. You have a lot of different flavors. Some are kind of like, quote unquote, obvious, like chocolate. Okay. everybody has a chocolate flavor, right? How do you go about
Mhm.
creating those kind of more unusual flavors like caramel salt or like things like that? Like how does that process look like?
Um, yeah, so we have an in-house R&D team. We have four people on our kind of like R&D and QA team. And that's basically all they do, right? Like develop new flavors, new products, and see how we can improve our existing formulas as well. So usually, how this process goes is we come up with a list of flavors that we think work or that we have flavor samples from in-house. You know, we did a quick test and we can say like, okay, we're onto something here. Then we create a short list of 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 6 flavors that could potentially work for a certain product. And that's where we already start involving our customers by just, you know, getting a simple poll up on the forum, sending out an email, sometimes even adding it to the post-purchase survey if we have space there. And just gauging interest, right? We give them 3, 4 options and say like, okay, do you want wild berries, caramel sea salt, I don't know, mango passion fruit, and then people can vote. And then the top flavor or the top 2 flavors, they kind of go in this development project where we see the actual feasibility of the flavor in the end product. And then we take it from there. And depending on the product and the product group, we either decide if it will be an additional flavor or that we have to rotate out a flavor, because sometimes also over time flavors just start to perform less. Some flavors are even a bit seasonal, I would say. And then, yeah, depending on the space in the production line, stock, or even if it makes sense to have so many flavors on a product page, we decide whether or not to launch it or to rotate it in and replace another flavor.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. You did mention a quote unquote mistake that you guys did, but if you were to look back historically, because you've been at this company since forever, basically, right? Like, what are kind
Yeah.
of the biggest challenges, not necessarily mistakes, that you've had to deal with?
Yeah, there are a few fun ones in there. Let me think. So let's do it chronologically. So I think back in 2017 or 2018, maybe, we had a dispute with an undisclosed party from the United States that led to a complete rebranding. Because we were not always called Jimmy Joy. And I'm also officially not even allowed to name our old company name. But if you Google it, you might be able to find our previous name. So yeah, when that happened, we of course, you know, we were only like 3, 4 years in. We've you know, done a couple of million in revenue, had tens of thousands of customers, had a lot of legacy on the internet, a lot of you know, newspapers, you know, high profile backlinks, documentaries, etc. They were writing about our previous company and kind of like the legacy that we already built in those 3, 4 years. And from one moment to the other, we had to completely rebrand our company, and that's how Jimmy Joy was born. So that's definitely one of the biggest challenges we've had to deal with. I think another challenge is when the Albert Heijn, which is the biggest retailer in the Netherlands, decided to pull our products out of like 800-ish stores back in like 2018, I think. And the reason for this was because of the Plenny bar supplier at the time. And they made a mix up with basically the supply of our vitamin and mineral mix, which is a bespoke mix that has to be made custom. And at the time, it had like a lead time of 12 weeks. And they made a mistake in the order process, which led to 12-week delays on our Plenty bars. And yeah, these retailers don't mess around. So if you're 10 weeks late, you're out. And we, you know, really tried everything within our power, but we couldn't manage to do it. So that was definitely a big challenge as well, and obviously a major setback because we just landed a deal with the biggest retailer in the Netherlands like not even a year ago. And fun fact, we are back in that same retailer now, nationwide, with a new version of the Plenty bar, but sourced from a different manufacturer. So I guess one of the main challenges also turn into a new opportunity and a learning moment to, take these things into account when looking for a co-packer, see what the lead times are, how they manage their supply and stuff like that. And I think the biggest recent challenge was obviously for us post COVID. So COVID, in essence, financially speaking, for the business was a blessing. Because I mean, yeah, I'm sure everyone can imagine that when you're selling healthy food online during COVID, it was booming business. But post COVID was quite a struggle for us in the sense that we sourced internationally and the whole world was basically recovering from this lockdown. Inflation was soaring. Container prices were like 5, 6, 7x their original price. So yeah, I mean, on the sourcing side of things, it really spiraled out of control. We were facing big delays everywhere, shortages, rapid price increases. And on top of that, we had the unfortunate event of the war in Ukraine starting. Not sure if you're familiar, but I think many people are familiar that Ukraine and Russia together are good for about 30% of the world's wheat and grain production. And one of our core products naturally is oats, which is an amazing product. But as soon as 30% of the world's wheat production kind of like disappears, people and companies need to get other sources to get their nutrition from, and one of them being oats. So oats predominantly, but also other ingredients soared due to the European war, and it really forced us to completely reevaluate our entire supply chain, increase our prices. Unfortunately, something we were just forced to do. We were fortunate that our customers were very receptive of this fact, and everybody kind of like understood what was going on. And we saw maybe not hyperinflation, but extreme inflation across the board in all of Europe, especially in the energy market, but also the food and grocery markets. So that's also one of the reasons why 2023, with all the economic turmoil going on, we focus predominantly on improving our margins back to a level where we can say that we're healthy and comfortable, and can kind of like start to look back at like scaling the company further. But those are a few challenges, especially as a bootstrap company. You don't have an unlimited money supply, and you need to be first order profitable, pay your people, make sure the suppliers get paid, have enough inventory. So it was quite a challenge.
What was the key learning, if any, out of all of this? Those were all company-wide challenges, by the way. I had in mind like
Yeah.
personal challenges also. But let's go to that like secondly, perhaps. What were the learnings out of that, of those companies? I mean, much of what you said feels almost like outside your control, even, right? Like, what can you learn? But
Yes.
be resilient, I guess. Resilience would be my assumption.
Yeah, no, I think resilience is probably, I mean, you get more resilient, but then I think it's again that kind of, competitive gamer inside me. Like, you lose games, it's gonna happen. But you only want to come back stronger after that. And like, that might sound a bit cringe, but I think, also like these are, maybe not personal setbacks, but like we are all kind of like the company, right? And because we have such a close company culture, such a flat company, basically everybody can just walk into each other's office. We don't really have big hierarchies or people sitting in their ivory towers. I think everybody feels a certain responsibility towards the company. And like, I'm not saying I solved these products by myself or these problems by myself. There was an entire team working on this for countless and countless of hours. So
I wanted to ask you about this, about the team, because I have noticed that pretty much everybody I've interacted with like looks to be pretty happy, like it feels like you have something good happening inside the
It's in the
company.
name, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
would be awkward if Jimmy Joy had angry employees or unhappy employees.
No, but really though, like what's the deal there? Like, do you get free products or like free Plenny shakes or why is everybody so happy? Like, how did you guys do that?
Yeah.
I'm saying
So
this in a good way, by the way. It's a good thing to be saying
yeah.
this because usually you see people
Hmm.
like frown and like, oh, we have a lot to do or know how we're gonna do. And you guys also have a lot to do, but you do this with a smile also, which is I think very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody is entitled to free unlimited Plenny products and Plenny meals
There
as
you
long as
go.
supply lasts. So that is definitely one of the perks of working at Jimmy Joy. And as you notice yourself, good nutrition does a whole lot to your physical and mental state as well. So that's one thing. I think the other one also, it's kind of what I said just now, that we have a really open culture. We're a relatively young team. We're like dynamic, startup-y, fun. We like to challenge the status quo. And I think it's in our DNA, right? I think if you compare Jimmy Joy to the heavy hitters right now in the industry, which is in Europe, predominantly you from the UK and Y Food from Germany, their whole, yeah, how do you say it? Like their branding, their feeling around it. It's very, um, yeah, rigid and black and white, and it feels almost kind of like artificial. And we're trying to be like the friendly, cool guy on the block the analogy I usually use for this is actually that, for example, if we look at you, I kind of see them as like your strict biology teacher trying to like make sure that you get everything right and pass with an A. And we see ourselves more as like the friend in class who's just, going to help you pass as well in a fun way. And I think that kind of like reflects in the company culture as well. And I think giving people a lot of freedom, is essentially a very good measurement for how happy people will be. And I don't mean that in a sense that people get complete freedom and can do whatever they want, because, I am sometimes definitely chasing people, with deadlines and, trying to come up with new suggestions on how we can improve. And I think one of the prime examples is email. If you see how we tackled email in the previous year. You work together with Tim, well, maybe not you directly, but Tim is definitely like a primary contact person for email. He is coming from he's a copywriter per son. He had very little commercial experience, let alone, email and technical setup and stuff like that. And when he first picked up email at the beginning of last year, it was very troublesome. And, I had to kick his ass a couple of times. But then when you see the progress and you get that freedom to kind of like experiment, and you see, the bar charts kind of like scale over time, and you get that, the motivation behind it, and happy peers and happy seniors, then I think that's essentially what's going to make people happy as well. So a good balance between management and freedom, but I would say it's probably 70% freedom, and then just guiding people along the way.
That's a good one. That's a good one. And by the way, shout out to Tim. I think he has done a great job. If he learned on his own, he really has done a great job. So kudos.
Yeah, it's amazing, and yeah, I can do shout out to Tim as well. Tim, if you're watching this later, for sure, man, great job, keep it up, and yeah, let's kick ass in 2024.
Looking ahead, you've accomplished quite a lot, obviously. But looking ahead, what's next for Jimmy Joy, and what's next for you also?
Yes. Yeah, I think we've barely scratched the surface, in a sense that we have only, like, we defined the nutritionally complete meal market back in 2014. There are a few companies that have had help with tens of millions in funding, and respect to them. They've been doing amazing, and they also, in a way, paved the way for us now. And we'll just continue doing our own thing and really enjoying the entire journey. But I think that if we look at the future, it is definitely also outside of the nutritionally complete meal space. So I don't want to give away too much because a lot of this is still in early stage development. Some are even almost ready to go. But I think there's two main kind of like categories, if you will, that we're going to venture into. But we're going to stick to food in a sense. One of them is being the snacks. So we're going to venture into the snack world, initially even savory snacks, because we have a big, sweet, kind of like repertoire of, products, the shakes, bars, drinks. It's all predominantly sweet. Of course, we have the savory meals, the Plenny pots, but snacks will be a big thing for us in the future, I think. And the main challenge will be to kind of like have this same nutritionally complete concept, but then put it in a snack form. And I don't really want to say too much, but it will be really, really, really awesome. And second will be supplements. And I think we try to stay away from the kind of like forefront nootropics kind of things, because I believe there's a market for it, and a lot of them are starting to be backed by modern science. But we also predominantly want to stick to what works and what is already backed by science. And these could be supplements, think like creatine or magnesium or something that is already proven to have an added benefit when you go to the gym. A lot of our customers already have a relatively active lifestyle. They use our products for the extra protein intake, etc. So if they're going to shop around for a creatine or a pre-workout, it makes sense that you can also, get the highest quality product from us while they're making an order anyway, instead of having to go to all these different web shops. So I think looking to the future, of course, we'll continue to improve on our current product lines, but also snacks and supplements for sure. And we'll see those in 2024, 2025.
That's good. That's good. From like an e-commerce standpoint, not like if you were to zoom out of the products a little bit, like do you see like expanding a new channel, maybe like some new technology, anything that you have your eyes on?
Um, that's a fair question. Well, if we're like speaking e-commerce channels, like one of the channels that's on the rise is TikTok. Actually, they've been doing amazing, especially the last couple of years. Very promising. The only thing is TikTok doesn't like us, so we're constantly battling their policy, because we keep getting flagged as meal replacement products, and apparently that's not allowed on their platform, even though in a technical sense, you could say that they are meal replacements. We just like to say that they're complete meals. And for whatever reason, we can't argue with them on this. So it's an uphill struggle. We're doing really well on awareness channels like Reddit and Twitter, which is quite unusual for the e-com space. A lot of companies are on performance, especially Meta and Google. I think part of that is because our audience is there as well. I mean, we are definitely targeting the tech savvy millennial between 25 and 40, and they're on Reddit and Twitter. So in that sense, it's very doing very well for us. And then I think that we don't do out of home. We don't do any traditional marketing, no radio, no TV. We are definitely a data driven company, very performance focused. So we need to see immediate results, and if we can't see that, then it's it might be for us, but it will be really hard to kind of like make decisions off of that. So we kind of like go the safe route of doing everything online.
Who's Jimmy from Jimmy Joy?
Yeah, that's a question everybody always asks, and I think Jimmy in a way is kind of like everyone, and I guess he is kind of like that. He's in everyone, but I think he's in my mind he's kind of like that cool kid in the class helping you pass your biology class, right? And making sure that you have your nutritional needs in order. but it is kind of like a mystery. Everybody has his own interpretation of Jimmy. Jimmy is not a person. Jimmy is someone or something that kind of like lives inside us. Not only I think the company, but also the customers. Even though we're not referring to them as Jimmys yet, maybe that's something that will change in the future.
I love it. I love it. It's very phonetically interesting. Also, like Jimmy Joy, like it just sounds nice. You know, it has something to it. So
That is kind of how it started when we were kind of like forced to rebrand. And I'll tell you one final story before we wrap up. I think, unless you have more questions for me. And that is that Jimmy Joy, when we initially launched Jimmy Joy would also be the name of the products, right? So as you know, but I'm not sure if the viewers or listeners know, our products are called Plenny. So Plenny shake, Plenny bar, Plenny drink, Plenny pot. And Plenny is kind of like street slang for plenty, plenty of nutritional. So even though it might be a bit far-fetched, that's the thought behind it. But Plenny only came into existence because right after rebranding, we kind of like announced it on publicly on Reddit and the likes. And people, especially British and Americans, were very vocal about, oh my God, imagine me sitting in the office with my shaker, drinking Jimmy Joy. Like it's going to give a very like weird feeling and people are going to probably look at me weird. Like I'm already drinking some gray beige sludge in the office. If it's also going to say I'm drinking Jimmy's Joy, then it's just going to be like super awkward. So within a week, we actually rebranded from Jimmy Joy, and we actually kind of like rebranded our product lines to be Plenny. So yeah,
that's cool. That's cool.
there's
That's
that.
cool. Thank you so much for taking the time. I think it was a very good chat. You shared quite a lot, and I know you're a busy guy, so I really, really appreciate that you find the time for this.
No worries at all. No, I really enjoyed it. Great questions. It was fun to tell a little bit about myself, about the company, and yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot, Otto.